Hey guys, it's Jessica, and this is part 2 of my Distress Oxide videos. If you want to check out the first video and haven't watched it already, the link is right here for you to click over and take a look. So just a disclosure, as I said in my first video, I am no expert with these Distress Oxide inks. I am just experimenting and seeing what works for me and what doesn't, and I thought that I would share my little journey with you guys so that if you are looking for inspiration or trying to figure out how to use these Distress Oxides, or if you need them or can pass on them, hopefully this video and the first video that I did will help you make those decisions. So for this first part here, what I am doing is I just swiped the Distress Oxides onto my craft mat and then spritzed them with water, and then I plopped my paper, it's just a piece of scrap paper, right into the ink and water on my craft mat. And I didn't bother heat setting it, but you can do that if you want to heat set for a faster dry time. And then here I am actually using the Distress inks of the same color because I wanted to see what the difference was in the pigments and how the ink adhered to the paper, just to kind of see what we were working with. So here I've got another scrap piece of paper and I'm doing the same process. So I put the ink down and swiped it onto my craft mat, spritzed it with water, and then put my paper into it just to see what my results would be. So when I put them side by side, you can tell a difference, obviously, between the inks. On the right is the Distress Oxide, and on the left is the Distress ink. The Distress ink is way more pigmented, and the Distress Oxide has this nice chalky finish, and they just blend seamlessly together, even though those colors are not close to each other. So for this, I had been experimenting with embossing folders and using my Distress Oxides. So what I did was I ran these giant tags through my embossing machine. So I have a Cuttlebug and I just used some random embossing folders. I had originally used these tags as like an inventory swatch type system for my embossing folders, but the tags were way too big. And so I moved to something different, but I didn't want to just throw out the tags, so here I am. So what I'm doing is, again, just swiping the ink pad directly onto the embossed or raised image, and you get a nice transfer of the color. Now, they are a little messy. I didn't do a very good job containing my ink, but you get the idea. So here I am going to create a background using the Distress Oxides, and I am using 3 colors here, Worn Lipstick, Broken China, and Wilted Violet, and I just put them on my craft mat so that they were right next to each other. Again, spritz them with water. I'm really into this whole smooshing thing, I think is what people are calling it, if you can't tell. I just really like it. It's easy and it's a great way to get a background that covers your whole paper, and it's just seamless. I really, really love the way that these turn out. So there I've got my heat tool and I am just applying some heat to my paper so that it will dry. I am usually very, very impatient when it comes to stuff like this, so I don't like to wait the time that it would take for it to air dry. So I'm heating the front, and then you can see here that I did hit the back also to try to help prevent some of that warping. It's pretty bad as far as warping goes. What I could have done is taped it down to a hardboard or something like that. That was, it could take the heat, and that way with it being taped down it wouldn't warp so much. And then when I was done I could just remove that tape, but I was just experimenting and didn't really think about it, so here I am. So then after I dried it, I went ahead and pressed the paper back into what was left over on my craft mat. So just the ink that was there from before with the water in it, and just kind of blobbed wherever it was from when I first put my paper in it. I just smacked it back down into it. And where I thought there could use a little bit more color, I just sort of put that area back into the ink there on the craft mat, and then I hit it with my heat gun again. So the cool thing about these Distress Oxides is that in between coats, so once you dry it, they layer on top of one another instead of blending in together like the Distress inks do. And I just really, really love the way that that turned out. That's probably my favorite background I have ever made. And that's saying something. So here I'm doing the same thing, so it is super duper fast. I am just using the same method, so putting the ink down onto my craft mat, spritzing it with water, flopping the paper right into it, and drying it in between, and then picking up more color as I need to. So I wanted to do this to show you that even the colors that aren't like super pretty, like how the warm lipstick and the broken china and the wilted violet, they're all super pretty together. But you can use colors that normally I feel like would make just a huge muddy mess. These are great for that. And this is like, I mean, it would be a great masculine card or some sort of military card where you were looking for sort of a camo feel. I thought this was really cool. It does kind of feel more of like the grungy, distress, multimedia look that I feel like I see on Tim's projects. He does more mess than I generally like, but I wanted to try, this sort of thing and see what I could come up with. I am a control freak and a neat freak when it comes to my crafts, and I have a really hard time letting myself go, and number one, getting messy, and number two, not having a plan for what my stuff is going to look like. So there I did another one. I took out the first one, I used 3 colors. The second one that I'm doing here, I'm only using 2. So for the first one there, I used the brown, green, and a yellow. And then for that one, I only used the brown and the green. So here I wanted to see how the Distress Oxides would stamp onto black cardstock using an actual stamped image rather than ink blending onto the dark cardstock. So here I've got a background stamp from My Favorite Things. And I am just inking that up with the worn lipstick color of Distress Oxide. Now you can see I was sort of like twisting the ink pad a little bit, and later I realized that that didn't really help me. I found that the ink was sort of smudgy when I did that, and I actually got better results if I just kind of pressed firmly with the ink pad straight down instead of doing any sort of twisting or swiping motion onto the stamp. So there I'm just rubbing down onto the stamp to make sure that my image is adhered well, and look at that. It shows up so well on that black cardstock. I couldn't believe how bright and vibrant it was for being such a light color, and of course for being on black cardstock. That's just, I mean, that's awesome. So I wanted to try it again, so I used the broken china color, and use the same stamp and the same cardstock, just to get an alternate view and also see how this one appeared on the paper as well. I kind of wanted to do every single color, but I felt like that would be ridiculous, so I just did the 2. So there they are with their ink pads and how they look on the cardstock. And then here I am just ink blending. So I'm using my mini ink blending tool with the foam pad, and I am blending that directly onto my paper. Now these foam pads that I have, they're brand new, and for some reason they are slightly larger than any of the other foam pads I've gotten from they're like the Ranger Tim Holtz, the ones that go with the ink blending tool, but these ones are very slightly larger, so I was getting a little bit of impression from the foam pad, because they were actually larger than the little Velcro and wood mount piece. So I'm not really sure what's up with that, but I think maybe, I don't know, just production, I don't know. They're just slightly different. So I was able to blend it out, so it wasn't really a big deal, but obviously you can see there that there's like little circular sort of shapes on the outside, but luckily I was able to blend it out when I went back over it with the colors. So first I just put down a pretty heavy amount of each color, and then I went back with the blue in the middle and sort of just went over both of those areas to get a nice little blended look. And then I went back over where the blue and the pink met also. And then finally I took the Worn Lipstick color and I hit the edges and blended that a little bit as well, just to get a finished look. So once I was done with this and I liked the way that it was blended, I went ahead and used some water with my mister. And right there I am just putting the water into my hand first and then dropping it onto the paper so I can get some larger drops instead of that fine mist spray. So you can see how it oxidizes and it's got that faded white sort of look. And I just applied I applied a lot of water to this, but I really liked the way that it turned out. So, you know, I thought it was really cool. And what I ended up doing is die cutting that thanks from it. And this is just a look at some of the cards that I made with the backgrounds that I made in this video. I really like the way they turned out, and I am excited to keep playing with these oxides. Thank you so much for watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, be sure to give it a big thumbs up and subscribe to my channel for more videos like this.